discussing about the content of your Terygopalatine fossa. In the last session, we have discussed about the boundaries and relations, right? Okay. I hope everyone remembered the boundaries and relations of your Terygopalatine fossa. Can you identify the bone? Which bone? Which bone is this? What are the parts of sphenoid bone? What is this part is called? Body of the sphenoid, and this is called greater wing, and this is called, what are these foramens? These three foramens from medial to lateral. The medial most is called foramen rotundum, and this one is called foramen oval, okay, and this is foramen spinosum. What are the foramens present at the posterior aspect? This is the anterior aspect and this is the posterior aspect. What is this is called? This is called orbital fissure. Which orbital fissure? Superior or inferior? Superior orbital fissure. And what about the foramens present here, and what is these are called? What is this structure is called? Medial and lateral. Which process? Pterygoid process. Okay, fine. What about the foramens present here? We have foramen rotundum followed by, there are three openings here also. What are those? Okay, foramen rotundum, oval, spinosum. Okay, that is like on the anterior aspect. We are talking in the posterior aspect. In last session, I have given the assignment question to find out the names of the openings or the canals present on the posterior aspect of your sphenoid bone or in the Terygopalatine fossa region. What are those? Can you see this diagram? Here we have foramen rotundum, pterygoid canal and palatovaginal canal. These are the three openings that is present on the posterior aspect of your sphenoid bone and also the Terygopalatine fossa region. Okay. Next, what are the contents of your Terygopalatine fossa? We have maxillary nerve, Terygopalatine ganglion, and third part of the maxillary artery. We have already discussed about the maxillary nerve and maxillary artery. I think someone else have already discussed. So in this session we are discussing only about the Terygopalatine ganglion. So what is ganglion? In last session that was also an assignment question. Okay, fine. So what is the important thing we have to concentrate while learning about the ganglion? What are the three major basics or any three important structures we have to concentrate while discussing about any ganglion? What are the important ganglions present in the body? We have one here, Terygopalatine ganglion, the other one is otic ganglion, submandibular ganglion. I think submandibular ganglion is already finished, right? So what are the important structures you have learnt in that, or what are the main headings you have learnt? While discussing about any ganglion, you should be aware of three important points. The first one is root of the ganglion, whether it is sensory root, motor root, sympathetic root or secretomotor roots, you should be aware of it. The second one is branches of that particular ganglion. How many branches are there? In this particular condition, we have 5 branches, okay, and the later one is distribution of the particular branches or which structures it will supply. These are the three important or basic concepts you should be aware to discuss about any ganglion present in the body. Roots, branches and distribution. Okay. Can you please turn off those fans? Fan. Both the fans. So in the Terygopalatine ganglion, you should be aware of three important nerves. What are those? What are the important nerves you should concentrate here? The first one is maxillary nerve, and the second one is greater or superficial petrosal nerve, and the third one is deep petrosal nerve. These are the three important structures you should know while discussing about the ganglions. Okay. Fan. Okay. Now imagine this has your face part. Okay. And here imagine your brainstem part. So what are the parts of brainstem? This is midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. Okay, these are the three parts of your brainstem. Now between these two structures, imagine in the center we have a ganglion like this. Okay, so we have a face region and we have a brainstem region. You have to imagine the internal structures present between these two boundaries. Okay, in the center we have a ganglion, that is your Terygopalatine ganglion. Okay, this ganglion is hanged down by your maxillary nerve. Okay, this is your maxillary nerve. Maxillary is a branch from which nerve? Trigeminal nerve, right? This is the maxillary division from trigeminal nerve. Okay, your maxillary division have two branches here. What are those? The first one is ganglionic branch. This is ganglionic branch, and the another one is zygomatic branch. This is the zygomatic branch. This is the zygomatic branch. Okay, and your zygomatic branch again divides into two other branches. What are those? Zygomatic facial branch, and zygomatic temporal branch. Okay, this is how your maxillary nerve is related to your ganglion. Okay, we are left with two more nerves, that is greater petrosal nerve and deep petrosal nerve. Now in your pons region we have one important nucleus, that is called superior salivary nucleus. Okay, from this nucleus we will get one important branch, that is your greater petrosal branch, greater or superficial petrosal branch. Okay, the last branch is deep petrosal branch. So now if this is the face region, below we have the neck region, right? There we have an important artery, that is your internal carotid artery. Internal, stop talking, internal carotid artery. Along this artery, your deep petrosal nerve will form a plexus. This is called sympathetic plexus around the internal carotid artery. Sympathetic plexus. Okay, and this is your deep petrosal nerve. From where this sympathetic plexus is coming? From which ganglion? If it is present in the neck region, from where these plexus are coming? From which part? From your cervical ganglion part. Okay, these are the three important roots of your Terygopalatine ganglion. The first one is maxillary nerve, the second one is greater petrosal nerve, and the third one is deep petrosal nerve. Okay, this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one. Which is sensory, which one is motor, and which one is secretomotor in this? Your maxillary nerve is a sensory nerve, sure? How? Your maxillary nerve is a sensory nerve, sure? What about the great petrosal nerve? How do you differentiate the sensory nerves or sensory root, motor roots, and secretomotor roots or sympathetic roots? This was the assignment question I asked you in the last session only. How do you differentiate it? How do you all differentiate the sensory root, motor roots, and sympathetic roots or secretomotor roots? Okay, can you define ganglion? Say it louder. Okay, fine. What is the significance of it? Okay, fine. So, in the very first point I have mentioned, to know about the ganglion, you should be aware of the roots. So, we have sensory roots, motor roots, secretomotor roots. How do you differentiate these topics? Or how do you define each of these topics? Okay. Okay. Repeat it.
Secretion of glands.
Secretion of glands. Okay. Is it right? Others? Is he right? Okay, so this is how, if you define the secretomotor and sensory and other one, how do you identify here? I have mentioned about three nerves: maxillary nerve, greater petrosal nerve, and deep petrosal nerve. So which one is the sensory root here? Maxillary. Okay, how? You can sit. What about the motor root? Which one is the motor root here? Deep petrosal nerve. Okay, secretomotor. And what do you mean by sympathetic plexus? So what do you mean by sympathetic plexus? These all are the basic questions. That's why I told you to write the assignment last sessions only. So once again, tomorrow also I have session. Please write the assignment, or at least try to learn the topic and come. Okay. So these are the three important roots we have to study in the Terygopalatine ganglion. Okay. Now I will go to the branches part. We have 5 branches. What are those? We have 5 branches. Any idea? We have lacrimal branch, orbital branch, nasal branch, palatine branch and pharyngeal branch. Okay. This is the very first branch which will run along with your zygomatic temporal branch. This is called lacrimal branch. Later it will enter your lacrimal gland. Okay, this is the lacrimal branch. The next one is orbital branch. This is the orbital branch. Next one is the nasal branch. And your palatine branch have 2 divisions. What are those? Greater palatine nerve and lesser palatine nerve. Here we have a palate. Okay. This is greater palatine nerve, and here this is the lesser palatine nerve. These two are together called palatine. Stop talking. Palatine branches. Okay, and here we have the pharyngeal branch. Pharyngeal branch. These are the 5 branches of your Terygopalatine ganglion. This is the first branch, second branch, third branch, fourth branch and fifth branch. Okay, and each of these branches will pass through either a foramen or canal. You should be aware of it because it is important for your MCQs. The very first one is orbital branch. It passes through which foramen? It passes through which foramen? Superior. Okay, what about the nasal branch? And remember one more important point, your greater petrosal branch and deep petrosal branch or nerve will pass through an important canal that is called pterygoid canal. Okay, pterygoid canal. So these two nerves are called nerves of pterygoid canal. What is the another name for the nerve of pterygoid canal? What is the another name for the nerve of pterygoid canal? It is called Vidian's or Vidian nerve. Okay. MCQ question once again. So these are the important roots and branches of your Terygopalatine ganglion. Okay. Distribution I will explain it in the PPT. Any doubts in this? So your Terygopalatine ganglion is hanged by 2 roots of the maxillary nerve. Your maxillary nerve is branched from the trigeminal nerve. Okay. Here your maxillary nerve will give rise to 2 types of branches. The one is ganglionic branch and another one is zygomatic branch. Again the zygomatic branch is divided into 2 divisions. Those are zygomatic facial branch and zygomatic temporal branches. Okay. The next one is superficial petrosal nerve, which is arising from your superior salivary nucleus, which is present in the pons region. The last one is deep petrosal nerve. It is coming from your cervical ganglion, has a sympathetic plexus that present along with your internal carotid artery. The 5 branches of the ganglion is lacrimal branch, orbital branch, nasal branch, palatine branch and pharyngeal branch. In few textbooks they haven't mentioned the lacrimal branch, but make sure you write that also. Okay. They have given only the greater palatine and lesser palatine has different branches and mentioned it has 5 branches. Okay. You better write about the lacrimal one also. Okay, and you should be know about all the canals or foramen these branches are passing through. Okay. Any doubts in this diagram? While answering, you have to write this diagram, so try to simplify it as much as possible and write it. Okay. Terygopalatine ganglion. The Terygopalatine ganglion, which is also known as ganglion of hay fever, is the largest parasympathetic peripheral ganglion present in the body. It serves as a relay station for the secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal gland and mucous glands of the nose, palate, pharynx and paranasal air sinus. Topographically, it is related to the maxillary nerve, but functionally it is connected to the facial nerve through the greater petrosal nerve. It is located deeply in the upper part of the Terygopalatine fossa, suspended from the maxillary nerve by two short roots of it. Those are called ganglionic branches. Location, it is located in the upper part of the Terygopalatine fossa, suspended from the maxillary nerve by the two short roots. Size, it is of the head of a small pin size, and relation behind it is related to your pterygoid canal. This is the pterygoid canal through which your greater petrosal nerve and lesser deep petrosal nerve are passing through. Medially, it is related to the spinopalatine foramen. In front, it is related to the perpendicular plate of the palatine, and above it is related to your maxillary nerve. Roots, we have three important roots. The first one is motor or parasympathetic root. It is derived from the nerve of the pterygoid canal. It carries ganglionic parasympathetic fibers from superior salivary nucleus. The postganglionic fibers arise from the cells in the ganglion and supply secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal glands of the nose, palate, nasopharynx and paranasal sinuses. Sympathetic root, it is derived from the sympathetic plexus around the internal carotid artery by a nerve of pterygoid canal, that is your deep petrosal nerve. Okay. It contains postganglionic fibers from superior cervical sympathetic ganglion. I have already mentioned these sympathetic plexus are coming from your cervical ganglion part. Okay. These fibers pass through the ganglion without relay and provide vasomotor supply to the mucous membrane of the nose, palate, pharynx and paranasal air sinus. The last one is sensory root. It is derived from your maxillary nerve and passes through the ganglion without interruption to be distributed through the branches of the ganglion. So these are the three important roots. The motor root is your greater petrosal nerve and the sympathetic root is your deep petrosal nerve. The last one is your maxillary nerve. Okay. Branches and distribution. The branches of the ganglion are actually the branches of the maxillary nerve which passes through the ganglion but without relying on it. While passing through the ganglion, they incorporate the parasympathetic and sympathetic fibers of the ganglion. The ganglion provides four sets of branches: orbital, palatine, nasal and pharyngeal branches. Along with that, you have to add the lacrimal branch also. The orbital branch enter the orbit through the inferior orbital fissure. Note down these points. The nasal branch pass through the spinopalatine foramen to enter the nasal cavity. The palatine branches including greater and lesser palatine nerves. The greater palatine nerve passes through the greater palatine foramen and the lesser palatine nerve passes through the lesser palatine foramen. The last one, pharyngeal branch, passes through the palatovaginal canal. Okay. So can you name the foramens now? The orbital will pass through which foramen? Pass through the inferior orbital foramen. What about the nasal branch? It passes through the spinopalatine foramen, and the great palatine nerve will pass through greater palatine foramen The lesser palatine nerve will pass through the lesser palatine foramen. What about the pharyngeal branch? It passes through your palato-vaginal foramen or canal. To vaginal canal. These are the important foramens you should remember along with the pterygoid canal. Okay. Any doubts in this? Any doubts? Okay. You can see the diagram now and compare the structures with whatever I have written on the board. If any doubts, we can discuss. First concentrate on the nose part and the face part, and then the brain part, brainstem part, then the ganglion, 3 important roots, maxillary nerve, petrosal nerve, deep petrosal nerve, then the 5 branches. Okay. Take 2 minutes and compare the structures present on your board and on the PPT. If any doubts, we can discuss. Any doubts in the diagram? No doubts? Yes or no? Any doubts? No doubts. Is it clear for everyone? Okay. Okay, this is all about the Terygopalatine Ganglion, which is one of the content of your Terygopalatine fossa. What about the maxillary nerve? What about the course and distribution of maxillary nerve? What are the branches of your maxillary nerve? Okay, how many parts are there in your maxillary artery? 3 parts. How do we divide those parts? There are 3 parts in your maxillary artery, right? And the content of your Terygopalatine fossa is the 3rd part of the maxillary artery. So how do we divide those parts? What is the embryological basis or structural basis to divide those parts? Okay, maxillary artery and maxillary nerve is finished or not? It's finished, right? Discussion. Okay, tell me the branches of the 3rd part. How many branches are there? 6 branches. What are those? Okay, if those topics are discussed, well and good. If it is not discussed, please let me know. Okay, fine. Is it clear for everyone? Any doubts in this? Any doubts in Terygopalatine fossa or Terygopalatine ganglion topic? No doubts? Everyone, is it clear? Okay, fine. Then we will discuss with the second topic, that is the development of thyroid gland. Okay. Gross structure of thyroid is finished. Is it finished? Okay. What are the important parts you see in the thyroid gland? Where you can see the thyroid gland? What is the location of thyroid gland? What about the extension? Vertical and horizontal extension of thyroid gland. What are the parts of thyroid gland? We have 2 lobes, right and left, lateral lobes. Those lobes are connected to each other by which structure? Isthmus. Okay. What is pyramidal lobe? Where you can see the pyramidal lobe generally? On? Okay, what is pyramidal lobe? What is the significance of pyramidal lobe? What is the blood supply of thyroid gland? It is supplied by which artery? Superior thyroid and inferior thyroid. Okay, one more artery. Accessory artery. What is that accessory artery mean? What about the nerve supply? Any clinical conditions? Do you remember? Okay. Any other conditions? What is the importance of thyroid gland? What is the importance of thyroid gland? Function of thyroid gland. Okay. Okay. What do you mean by C cells? What is the significance of C cells? T4. Okay. No, I'm asking what is the significance of C cells? Okay. Anything else? Fine. We'll start with the development of thyroid gland. The development of thyroid gland starts from the 3rd week of intrauterine life. Okay. Intrauterine life. Hope you all remember the picture of or diagram of pharyngeal arches. Okay. Yeah, go. Okay. So this is the picture of your pharyngeal arches. If you remember, this is 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 6th pharyngeal arches. And what is this structure called? It is called lingual swelling. And what is this structure called? It is called tuberculum impar. Tuberculum impar. And what about this structure? This is called what foramen? This is your foramen cecum. It is already discussed in the development of the tongue part. And what is this structure called? This is called hypobranchial eminence. Hypobranchial eminence will give rise to which part or which structure of our body? Hypobranchial eminence will give rise to which part of the body? What about the lingual swelling and tuberculum impar? It will give rise to which part? It will give rise to tongue. Okay. What about the hypobranchial eminence? It is discussed in the fate of pharyngeal arches. Okay, fine. Just go and see those topics once again. Now we'll concentrate only on the foramen cecum part for the development of your. Stop laughing. What is the joke? We'll concentrate only on the foramen cecum part for the development of the thyroid gland. Okay. So now this is your foramen cecum part. It is just a depression at this point. So this part what you are seeing is nothing but the endodermal thickening. Endodermal thickening. Okay. So after the 3rd week of intrauterine life, this endodermal thickening will start growing in the downward direction. Once the growth takes place, this is how the structure will look. and this structure now it is called as Thyroglossal Duct. It is called as Thyroglossal Duct. Okay. Now this structure by the seventh week of intrauterine life, it will undergo a process called bifurcation. Bifurcation only in the caudal end, not on the cranial part, only on the caudal part. This is the caudal end. This is the cranial end. Okay. Once the bifurcation takes place, this is how the structure will look. Okay. Bifid lobe of Thyroglossal duct. Now this is called as bifid lobe of Thyroglossal duct. Okay. So the development of your thyroid gland starts from the third week. It starts from the foramen cecum part. Here on the third week, the foramen cecum is just an depression. So we can see the endodermal thickening. This endodermal thickening will start growing in a downward direction. By the seventh week, it will undergo a process called bifurcation in the caudal end. So now this structure is called the bifid lobe of your Thyroglossal duct. Once the bifurcation takes place, the cells will undergo proliferation. So these lobe will get swelled just like this. Okay, swelling of your lobe will take place once the bifurcation happens. Here I mentioned it will start growing in the downward direction. So it is present between your second and third pharyngeal arch, right here in the beginning of the third week. So by the end of the seventh week, it will grow up to your sixth pharyngeal arch from here to here. Okay. Here in the sixth pharyngeal arch, if you remember the fate of pharyngeal arches, I have mentioned a thing called complex structure. What is that complex structure is named as? Which happens by the fusion of your fourth, fifth and also sixth pharyngeal arches. What is that complex structure is called? If you can answer something, we can discuss. At least you have textbook, you have your running notes. Here in the sixth pharyngeal arch part, I have mentioned something about complex structure while discussing about the fate of pharyngeal arches. So what is that complex structure is called? Stop clicking photos, I will share the PPT. What it is called? Okay, fine. Here I'll draw a structure like this. Okay, this is nothing but a structure or a part present in your complex structure. Complex structure. Okay, and this complex structure carries your parafollicular cells. Parafollicular cells. That is your C cells. Okay. Once the fission of your complex structure, whatever I have written in the blue part, will come and combine with your bifid lobe to form the lateral lobes of your adult thyroid gland. Like this. So now this will develop into your lateral lobes. This is right lateral lobe and this is left lateral lobe, and this is your isthmus part, and here we can see the pyramidal lobe, right? So I have mentioned this complex structure will fuse only with your bifid lobe part to form the lateral lobes. Your thyroglossal duct part, whatever this part is there, it is still remained. So this will generally degenerate or disappear in the process of development. So now this part, whatever the pyramidal lobe is present, it is nothing but the remnant of your thyroglossal duct. Okay, this is how your development of the thyroid gland takes place. It starts from the foramen cecum at the 3rd week of intrauterine life. The foramen cecum depression will start growing in the downward direction. Once it starts growing in the downward direction, we call it as thyroglossal duct. By the end of 7th week, the caudal end of this duct will undergo bifurcation. We call it as a bifid lobe of the thyroglossal duct. Once the bifurcation takes place, the cells present in this region will undergo proliferation and the swelling of the bifid lobe will take place, and it will extend only up to the 6th pharyngeal arch part. Once it extends up to your 6th pharyngeal arch, it will combine with one structure that is called the complex structure. Okay, once it combines or fuses with the complex structure, it will form the lateral lobes of your thyroid gland, that is the right and left lateral lobes, and these lobes are connected by the isthmus. Whatever the remaining thyroglossal duct part is present, it will usually undergo degeneration and it will disappear. The small part will remain, that will called as pyramidal lobe. So basically your pyramidal lobe is nothing but the remnant of your thyroglossal duct part. Okay, this is how the development of your thyroid gland takes place. Any doubts in this? Any doubts? Say either yes or no. Any doubts? No. Okay. Fine. The thyroid gland develops the thyroid gland develops from the endodermal diverticulum. So this is your endodermal thickening. So basically your thyroid gland is endodermal in origin. That is called the thyroglossal duct that forms in the floor of your primitive pharynx. Site of formation of this diverticulum is indicated in adults by the foramen cecum part. The parafollicular cells or C cells of the thyroid gland develop from the neural crust cells that migrate into ultimobranchial body formed by the caudal pharyngeal complex formed by the fusion of your 4th and 5th pharyngeal pouches. In few textbook it is mentioned as the 4th and 6th pharyngeal arches because the 5th one will disappear. Okay, so this complex structure is called caudal pharyngeal complex structure. This is called caudal pharyngeal complex structure, and this particular part where the fusion it will takes place, that is called the ultimobranchial body. This is called the ultimobranchial body. Remember these two names, okay? It is important. Ultimobranchial body is again your MCQ question. Okay. You can see here, this is your lingual swelling. Below that we have a tuberculum. Below the tuberculum we have the foramen cecum. From this your thyroid gland is going to develop. The thyroid gland begins to develop during the 3rd week of intrauterine life, has an endodermal thickening in the midline of the floor of the primitive pharynx between the tuberculum impar and copula. What do you mean by copula? Here I have mentioned only about the tuberculum impar. So what is copula? We have already discussed about it. What is copula? Or where the copula is present in your pharyngeal arch part. Just go and read once the fate of pharyngeal arches, everyone, okay? Next, this thickening forms a small outpoaching structure, that is, it becomes depressed below the surface to form a diverticulum called the Thyroglossal Duct. This duct first grows downward and slightly forward across the tongue and then descends in front of the neck region. In the neck, first it passes in front of the hyoid bone, then winds around its lower border to become retrohyoid in structure. So what do you mean by retrohyoid? Behind the hyoid bone. Okay. By the end of 7th week of intrauterine life, it reaches to its definitive position. That means it will reaches up to your 6th pharyngeal arch from the 2nd pharyngeal arch border part, where it tips become a solid mass of cell and it will soon bifurcates. The proliferation of cells of this bifid tip of thyroglossal duct give rise to 2 lobes of the thyroid gland that are connected to each other by the isthmus part. The isthmus of the thyroid gland lies anterior to the developing 2nd and 3rd tracheal rings. The parafollicular or C cells to the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland are contributed by the neural crest cells of the caudal pharyngeal complex. MCQ question. The connecting link between the thyroid gland and the floor of the primitive pharynx, that is the thyroglossal duct, will get obliterated and later it will disappear in the process of development. Whatever the remaining part or the remnant, it is called as pyramidal lobe part. The proximal opening of the thyroglossal duct persists as a small pit on the dorsum of the tongue of the foramen cecum. You can see here, this is the very first picture. We can see the endodermal thickening, then the depression will present. That depression is nothing but your foramen cecum. Later it will start growing in the downward direction. Now it is called as thyroglossal duct part. And by the end of the 7th week, the caudal end of this thyroglossal duct will undergo bifurcation, okay, and this bifurcated part will later give rise to your 2 lobes of the thyroid gland. Next, concentrate only on the 5th and 6th diagram. You can see here, this is your ultimobranchial body, which is a part of your caudal pharyngeal complex. It will come and fuses with your lobes of the thyroglossal duct. It contains your parafollicular cells. Okay, once the fusion takes place, it will form the lateral lobes, and the lobes are connected by isthmus, and the remnant of your thyroglossal duct, that is, will form your pyramidal lobe part. Okay, any doubts? Any doubts in this? Okay, now this B structure will show the pathway from your foramen cecum to your pyramidal lobe part. You can see here, this is the foramen cecum. Above we have tuberculum impar and below we have hypobronchial eminence part. And here it is crossing in front of your hyoid bone and it is reaching up to your pyramidal lobe. Okay, this is to show the pathway between your foramen cecum and the lobes of the thyroid gland. Any doubts? Any doubts? Okay. So what is the structure that connects your hyoid bone and your thyroid gland? Pyramidal lobe of the thyroid gland, what is that structure called? There is a fibromuscular band that present between your hyoid bone and your pyramidal lobe that connects each other. What is that fibromuscular band is called? Say it again. Okay, fine, right. Okay. Next we have clinical conditions based on the shape of the structures present in your thyroid gland. Anomalies of shape. The pyramidal lobe is present so often that it is regarded as a normal structure. It may arise directly from the isthmus or from one of the lobes. So instead of present as the remnant of your thyroglossal duct, sometimes your pyramidal lobe will directly arise from the isthmus part or from any one particular lobe part. This is the clinical condition. Okay. It may have no connection with the rest of the thyroid and may be divided into two or more parts. What is this red part is called? Levator part. So here sometimes your pyramidal lobe will not be in contact with any lateral lobes or even with the isthmus, but it will divide into two parts and it will be in connection with your levator part sometimes. Okay. The isthmus may be absent. What is this condition called? Agenesis of isthmus. In few conditions there will be absence of isthmus, only the lobes will present. What happens if only the lobes present and there will be no isthmus? What happens if only two lateral lobes of your thyroid gland is present and there is no isthmus? Say it again. Yeah, right. There will be no connection between those two lobes, right? Any other approach? Why the connection between two lobes are important? First tell me that. What is the role of isthmus? Gross is finished, right? Thyroid gland. Everyone. Gross anatomy of thyroid gland is finished, right? Yes or no? Yes. So tell me, what is the significance of isthmus? Is it really important to have a connection between two lobes of your thyroid gland? Yes or no? Yes. Why?
Maintains the gland's overall function and it helps us to movement of the gland during incubation.
It will help the movement during?
Swallowing.
Okay, fine. So once if the isthmus is not present, how it is going to affect the function? Take an assignment question. First, everyone know the importance of isthmus. Is it really important that isthmus has to present between two lobes to build a connection? What is the reason behind it? Answer this question first. In next session, in tomorrow's session, I'll discuss about the agenesis of your isthmus and agenesis of lobes also. The second condition I have mentioned is one of the lobes of the gland may be very small or absent. That is called agenesis of lateral lobes or agenesis of lobes. I'll discuss about these two topics, but before that you should know the gross part. Okay? Fine. The next condition is called thyroglossal cyst or fistula. The thyroglossal cyst may form anywhere along the course of the thyroglossal duct. Normally the thyroglossal duct atrophies and disappears, but a part of it may persist and form a cyst. That is called the thyroglossal cyst part. The thyroglossal cysts are always formed in the midline of the front of the neck and observed by the age of 5 years. If the thyroglossal cyst ruptures, it communicates to the exterior by secondary opening on the surface of the neck and it is called thyroglossal fistula. Okay. This is how the thyroglossal cyst will appear on the neck region. It will always appear almost closer to the midline of the neck. Once it ruptures, this cyst ruptures into the surface area, that condition is called thyroglossal fistula. Okay. The next condition is ectopic thyroid tissue. The small masses of the thyroid tissue may be present at the abnormal sites. So your thyroid tissue may present in your larynx, trachea, esophagus, pericardium, pleura, or also in the ovary region. This condition is called ectopic thyroid tissue. Okay. So any doubts in the development of thyroid gland? Any doubts in those pictures? Say yes or no. Any doubts in those pictures? Okay. Any doubts in the clinical anatomy? What are all the conditions we have seen in clinical part? Agenesis of lobe or agenesis of isthmus. Those two topics I'll discuss in next session. But you have to remind me, okay? Before that you should be able to answer my questions. Okay? And what about the other condition? Thyroglossal cystoid and thyroglossal fistula. The last one is ectopic thyroid tissue. And another one is anomalies in the shape of the pyramidal lobe part. Okay? Next. Read the clinical question and answer. Here they have already mentioned a girl is diagnosed with the thyroglossal cyst part. So what is the embryological basis of the thyroglossal cyst, and also tell me with what other entity or condition such as swelling may be confused with. So what is the embryological basis for the thyroglossal cyst? So in the normal condition, your thyroglossal cyst will mostly obliterate and it will disappear. Only a small part will remain attached with your isthmus, that is called the pyramidal lobe. If this does not happen, if the thyroglossal duct does not undergo the disappearance process and if it may remain there, it will form a cyst structure. Okay. So what is the other entity or condition such a swelling may be confused with? So what are all the other swellings you see in the neck region? What are those conditions are named as? Mumps. Okay. Okay. Goiter. Okay. Okay, write the assignments. Later I will share the key answers with your CR. Okay. The second question is review question. Write short notes on the development of thyroid gland. Okay. You can write the first, second, directly the fourth and fifth diagrams. So total 4 diagrams is enough. Okay. No need to write the pharyngeal arches. You can start from the endodermal thickening, then the thyroglossal duct part, then directly the bifurcation along with the fusion of the complex structure, then the adult structure. These 4 diagrams is enough. Along with explanation, not only diagrams. Next. The parafollicular cells or C cells of the thyroid gland develop from which pouch? The parafollicular cells or C cells of the thyroid gland develop from which pouch or which arch? D. Okay. From the 4th pharyngeal pouch. Okay. Any other answers? Okay, your parafollicular cells will actually develop from the 4th pharyngeal pouch. If it is mentioned as 4th, 5th and 6th, they will give one more option like all of the above. If not, they will mention only about the 4th one. Okay. The next question is thyroid gland starts functioning by the end of which month? Gross is finished, so you can answer this question also. By the end of 3rd month. Okay. Any other answers? By the end of 3rd month. How? Any explanation? Okay. By the end of 3rd month, what function it will start actually? Secretion. Okay. Any other point? Stop talking. So they are telling by the end of 3rd month your thyroid gland will start functioning. So my question is what function it will perform by the end of 3rd month? Secretion. Okay. Any other thing? Okay, fine. Next, last question. Select the incorrect statement about the development of the thyroid gland. What is the incorrect statement among the 4 statements given? So, which is the incorrect statement here? D. Sure. Okay, start functioning by the end of 6th month. Okay, any other answers? Fine, share both PPT to your CR. You can answer once you are finished with writing your assignments. Please let me know. I'll share the key answers with all the specific points. Okay. Any doubts? In this session, we have discussed about the Terygopalatine Ganglion along with the roots, branches and distribution, and also the development of the thyroid gland with anomalies, and also MCQs and review questions. Any doubts in these 2 topics, either yes or no? Okay, fine. Thank you.